The Blind Queen's Revenge, when love becomes poison. They said love would save her. They lied. Alara Vance, blind, dying, and utterly betrayed, stood in the rain with nowhere left to run. Her husband wanted her dead. Her sister wanted her fortune. And the poison they'd been feeding her for months was finally winning, but Alara wasn't done yet. This is the story of how a broken woman became a queen, how trust turned to steel, how the girl they buried alive clawed her way back to destroy them all. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments. Let's begin. The first thing Alara noticed when she woke that morning was the taste. Metallic. Wrong. Like copper pennies dissolving on her tongue. She'd tasted it before, every morning for the past 3 months, but today it was stronger, sharper. It sat in her mouth like a threat she couldn't name, and her stomach twisted in response. Kael? Her voice came out scratchy, weak. She hated how small she sounded. No answer. Alara pushed herself upright in bed, her fingers brushing across the silk sheets until they found the edge of the mattress. The room felt empty. Cold. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with temperature. He'd left again. She told herself it didn't matter. Told herself he was busy with estate business, with the council, with the 100 responsibilities that came with being Lord of House Vance. But the lie sat heavy in her chest, right next to the poison she didn't know was there. Alara had been blind for 2 years. A fever had taken her sight when she was 19, and the world had folded into darkness so complete she sometimes forgot what light looked like. But she'd learned to navigate it, learned to read the texture of silence, the weight of a room, the small shifts in air that told her when she was alone. And right now she was very alone. Her maid, Celeste, arrived an hour later with breakfast. Alara heard the tray settle on the bedside table, heard the soft clink of porcelain against wood. "Good morning, my lady." Celeste's voice was gentle. It always was. Too gentle, maybe. Like Alara was something fragile that might shatter if handled roughly. "Morning," Alara murmured. She reached for the teacup, her fingers finding it with practiced ease. The warmth bled through the porcelain into her palms. "Lord Kael asked me to tell you he'll be back this evening," Celeste said. "He's meeting with the trade envoys from the northern provinces." "Of course he is." Celeste hesitated. Alara could feel it. The pause, the unspoken question hanging in the air. "Is there anything else you need, my lady?" "No, thank you." The door closed softly. Alara lifted the teacup to her lips. And that's when the vision hit. It wasn't sight, not exactly. It was something stranger, something that had started happening a few weeks ago. Flashes, impressions, images that burned themselves into her mind without warning, sharp and vivid and impossibly real. This one was brutal. She saw herself lying in bed, pale, still, dead. Kael stood over her body, his face blank. Beside him was Lyra, her stepsister, beautiful and cold, her hand resting possessively on his arm. "Finally," Lyra said. Her voice was silk and satisfaction. "I thought she'd never die." Kael's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "The poison took longer than expected. Does it matter? She's gone. The fortune is ours." Alara's hand shook so hard the teacup slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the floor, hot liquid spreading across the stone like blood. She couldn't breathe. Poison. The word echoed in her skull, louder than her heartbeat, louder than the ringing in her ears. They were killing her, her husband, her sister, the 2 people she trusted most in the world. Alara didn't move for a long time. She sat frozen on the edge of the bed, her bare feet inches from the broken porcelain, her mind racing in circles that led nowhere. It couldn't be real. Visions weren't real. They were just, what? Hallucinations? Fever dreams? But the taste in her mouth said otherwise. The exhaustion that had been creeping through her bones for months. The way her body felt like it was shutting down piece by piece. She pressed a hand to her stomach and felt the slight swell of nausea rise. How long had they been poisoning her? How much time did she have left? Celeste returned to clean up the broken cup. She didn't ask questions, just moved quietly around the room while Alara sat silent and shaking. When she was gone, Alara stood. Her legs felt weak, unsteady, but she forced herself to move. She needed answers, needed proof. She couldn't trust her visions. Not yet. But she could trust her ears. Bum. Elara found them as the East Wing study. She hadn't meant to. She'd been looking for Kael, following the faint sound of his voice through the halls, her fingertips trailing along the walls for balance. But when she reached the study door, she stopped. Because Lyra was with him, and they were laughing. She doesn't suspect a thing, Lyra said. Her voice was light, amused. Honestly, Kael, I'm almost impressed. You've played the doting husband so well. It's not difficult, Kael replied. She's blind. Half the time she doesn't even know I'm lying. Alara's breath caught. How much longer? Lyra asked. Dr. Marin says another month, maybe less. The doses have been increasing. Good. I'm tired of waiting. Once she's gone, we can finally be together properly. No more sneaking around. There was a pause. Then the sound of movement, footsteps crossing the room, fabric rustling. You're beautiful, Kael murmured. And you're mine, Lyra whispered back. The kiss that followed was audible, wet, deliberate. Alara's stomach heaved. She turned and walked away as quietly as she'd come, her hand pressed to her mouth to keep from screaming. She made it back to her room before she vomited. It was violent and sudden, her body rejecting everything, the tea, the truth, the last shreds of hope she'd been clinging to. She collapsed beside the basin, gasping, her whole body shaking. They were going to kill her. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. And there was nothing she could do about it. Elara wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and forced herself to think. She had no allies. No family except the ones trying to murder her. Her father was dead. Her mother had remarried when Elara was 12, bringing Lyra and her cold, calculating stepmother into their lives. Her younger brother Finn had disappeared 6 months ago. Run off, everyone said, though Elara had never believed it. She had no money of her own. Everything was tied up in the estate, in Kael's name now that they were married. She had no sight, no strength, no time. But she had one thing, visions. The next vision came that night. Elara was lying in bed, staring into the darkness that was her constant companion when the world fractured again. This time she saw a road, a forest, rain falling in sheets, and a carriage, black lacquer, gold trim, wheels cutting through mud. Inside sat a man, tall, broad-shouldered. His face was sharp and cold, all hard angles and unreadable eyes. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire. Dangerous, absolute, impossible to ignore. An alpha. The vision shifted. She saw herself, stumbling, desperate, throwing herself in front of the carriage, saw the horses rear, saw the man step out into the rain, his expression unreadable as he looked down at her. Please, her future self whispered, help me. And then the vision ended. Elara lay still, her heart pounding. She didn't know who the man was, didn't know if the vision was real or just another trick of her dying mind. But it didn't matter, because right now it was the only chance she had. She planned it carefully. Elara had always been good at listening, at piecing together information from conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. Over the next 2 days, she mapped out Kael's schedule, Lyra's movements, the routines of the household staff. She packed nothing, couldn't risk it. Instead, she wore her warmest dress and hid a small knife in her boot, one of Finn's old blades, left behind when he disappeared. On the third night, when the house was quiet and the guards were changing shifts, Elara slipped out through the servants' entrance. The rain started almost immediately. It was cold and relentless, soaking through her dress within minutes. Elara didn't care. She kept moving, one hand trailing along the garden wall, her feet finding the path through memory and desperation. Behind her, she heard shouts. They'd discovered she was gone. Elara ran. She didn't know where she was going, didn't have a map or a plan beyond a way. The ground was slick beneath her feet, and twice she fell, mud and gravel tearing at her palms. But she got up, kept running. The forest swallowed her whole, trees pressed in from all sides, their branches catching at her hair and clothes. Elara's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. Behind her, the shouts grew louder, closer. They were hunting her. Kael wouldn't let her go. Not alive, not with what she knew. Elara's foot caught on a root, and she went down hard, her head cracking against something solid. Pain exploded through her skull, white-hot and blinding. She lay there in the mud, gasping, the world spinning even though she couldn't see it. And then she heard it. Hooves, wheels, a carriage. Alara dragged herself to her feet and stumbled forward, her hands outstretched. She didn't know if this was the vision or just blind luck, didn't know if she was about to be saved or crushed. She threw herself into the road. The horses screamed. The carriage lurched to a stop, wheels skidding in the mud. Alara collapsed. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate. A voice cut through the rain, deep, cold, and absolutely in control. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Alara looked up, even though she couldn't see him. Rain streamed down her face, mixing with blood from the cut on her temple. "Please," she whispered, "they're going to kill me." Silence. "Then, who are you?" "Alara Vance. I'm the daughter of House Vance. My husband and my sister are trying to murder me. I have nowhere else to go." Another pause, longer this time. "Get in," the man said finally. Strong hands gripped her arms and hauled her to her feet. Alara stumbled forward, was half lifted into the carriage. The door slammed shut behind her. The interior was warm and dry and smelled faintly of leather and smoke. Alara sagged against the seat, her whole body shaking. Across from her, the man spoke again. "I'm Darius Wolfe, Alpha King of the Northern Territories." His voice was flat, uninflected. "And you just made this very complicated." Alara's breath hitched. She'd heard of him. Everyone had. Darius Wolfe, ruthless, powerful, untouchable. A king who ruled with an iron fist and trusted no one. "I don't need your pity," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need your protection, just until I can—" "Until you can what?" Darius interrupted. "Go back? They'll kill you the moment you set foot in that house." "I know." "Then what do you want?" Alara lifted her head, her blind eyes fixed on where she thought he was sitting. "I want revenge." The silence that followed was heavy. Darius didn't answer right away. The carriage started moving again, wheels creaking, rain drumming against the roof. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and considering. "Revenge is expensive. I'll pay whatever price you name." "You don't have anything to pay with. You said it yourself. You're a fugitive from your own house." "Then I'll owe you," Alara said. "A life debt. Whatever you want. Just help me destroy them." Bold words from someone who can't even see. Alara's jaw tightened. "I don't need to see to know what they've done, and I don't need sight to make them pay for it." Another pause. Then Darius laughed, short, sharp, humorless. "You've got fire," he said. "I'll give you that." "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. And don't lie to me, Alara Vance. I'll know." So she did. She told him about the poison, the visions, the overheard conversation, the months of weakness and pain she'd attributed to illness, never suspecting the people she loved were the ones killing her. Darius listened without interrupting. When she finished, the carriage had gone quiet except for the rain. "Your visions," he said finally. "How reliable are they?" "I don't know. They started a few weeks ago, but everything I've seen so far has come true." "Show me." "What?" "You said you saw me in a vision. What did you see?" Alara hesitated. Then, "You. This carriage. Me throwing myself in front of it. You asking who I was." "And what happens next?" "I don't know. The vision ended." Darius made a thoughtful sound. "Convenient." "I'm not lying." "I didn't say you were." He shifted in his seat. "Here's my offer. You stay with me, under my protection. In exchange, you tell me everything your visions show you. If they're useful, if they prove to be real, I'll help you take down House Vance. And if they're not, then you're a mad woman I picked up in the rain and you'll be someone else's problem." It wasn't kind, wasn't comforting, but it was honest. Alara nodded. "Deal." "Good. Now sit back and rest. You look like death." She almost laughed, because that's exactly what she was supposed to be, dead. But instead she was here, alive, and burning with a purpose that felt sharper than any blade. Kyle and Lyra had made a mistake. They'd underestimated her, and Alara was going to make sure it was the last mistake they ever made. The journey to Darius's estate took 3 days. Alara spent most of it sleeping, or trying to. Her body was exhausted, wrung out from months of poison and the adrenaline crash of her escape. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw them. Kael's face, Lyra's smile, the way they'd laughed about her death like it was a joke. On the second day, the visions came back. This one was different, darker. She saw Finn, her younger brother, 16 and scared, locked in a cell somewhere cold and damp. His face was bruised, his wrists shackled. He was calling her name. Alara jerked awake, gasping. "What did you see?" Darius's voice cut through the darkness. She'd forgotten he was there. Forgotten she wasn't alone. "My brother," she said, her voice shaking. "Finn, he's alive. They have him locked up somewhere." "Who?" "I don't know, but he's in danger." Darius was quiet for a moment. "Your family told everyone he ran away." "They lied. He wouldn't just leave. Her throat tightened. "He was the only one who didn't treat me like I was broken." "Then we'll find him." Alara's head snapped toward him. "What?" "If your visions are real and your brother is alive, then finding him proves it. And if it proves your visions are real, then I have a very valuable asset on my hands." "I'm not an asset," Alara said sharply. "No," Darius agreed. "You're a weapon, and I'm very good at using weapons." Alara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't anyone's tool, but the truth was she didn't care what he called her, as long as he helped her burn House Vance to the ground. They arrived at Darius's estate on the evening of the third day. Alara could feel the difference immediately. The air was colder here, sharper, and the sounds were different. No city noise, no chatter of servants, just wind and silence and the creak of heavy gates opening. "Welcome to Wolfspire," Darius said as the carriage stopped. A hand gripped her elbow, firm but not rough, and guided her out. Gravel crunched beneath her feet. The wind bit at her face. "This way," Alara followed, her fingers brushing against his arm for balance. She hated needing help, hated being led like a child, but she swallowed her pride and kept moving. Inside, the air was warmer. Alara heard the echo of their footsteps in what must have been a massive hall. "Marin!" Darius called. A woman's voice answered, crisp, professional. "Your Majesty." "This is Alara Vance. She's been poisoned. I need you to examine her and tell me how much damage has been done." "Of course." "This way, please." Alara was led to another room, smaller, quieter. She was guided to sit on what felt like an examination table, and gentle hands began checking her pulse, her temperature, the lymph nodes in her neck. "How long have you been experiencing symptoms?" Dr. Marin asked. 3 months, maybe longer." "And the poison?" "I don't know what it is. I've been getting weaker, tired, nauseous." Marin made a thoughtful sound. "I'll need to run tests, but if you've been ingesting poison for 3 months and you're still alive, either the doses were very small or you have an unusually strong constitution." "Or both," Darius said from somewhere near the door. "How long do I have?" Alara asked quietly. Marin hesitated. "I can't say for certain until I know what we're dealing with. But if you stop ingesting it now, your body should begin to recover, slowly." "Will I get my strength back?" "In time, yes." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope. And right now, hope was enough. That night, Alara lay in a bed that wasn't hers, in a house that wasn't home, and tried to process everything that had happened. She'd escaped. She'd survived. She'd made a deal with a king, and tomorrow the real work would begin. Because Alara wasn't just going to survive, she was going to make them pay. All of them. Kael, for his lies and his poison and his hands that had held her while plotting her death. Lyra, for her betrayal and her greed and the way she'd smiled while Alara died. Her stepmother, for orchestrating it all. And anyone else who had stood by and let it happen. Alara closed her eyes and let the anger settle in her chest like a second heartbeat. She was done being the victim, done being the blind girl they pitied and discarded. From now on, she was something else, something dangerous, and they were going to learn that the hard way. The first lesson came at dawn. Alara woke to the sound of steel on steel, sharp, rhythmic, brutal. She sat up in bed, disoriented, her body still aching from the journey. The room was unfamiliar, the sheets too crisp, the air too cold. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. She dressed herself slowly, fingers fumbling over buttons and laces. No maid appeared to help. At Wolfspire, it seemed, she was expected to manage on her own. Good. She was done being pampered and poisoned in equal measure. Alara found her way to the door by memory and touch, then stepped into the hallway. The sounds of combat grew louder, voices shouting commands, feet pounding against stone, the unmistakable crack of wood on bone. She followed it. The training yard was massive. Alara could tell from the echo of sounds, the way noise bounced off distant walls. Cold air hit her face as she stepped outside, and somewhere to her left men were fighting. Again! Darius's voice cut through the chaos. You're slow, you're sloppy. If I wanted to watch children play, I'd visit a nursery. Someone grunted in response, pain or frustration, Alara couldn't tell. Faster! Your enemy won't wait for you to catch your breath. The crack of wood against wood echoed across the yard. Someone cursed. Lady Vance! Alara turned toward the voice. It was Marin, the doctor from last night. You shouldn't be out of bed yet, Marin said, though her tone wasn't unkind. Your body needs rest. My body's been resting for 3 months, Alara replied. I'm done with that. Marin made a thoughtful sound. Stubborn. That'll either save you or kill you. Probably both. A laugh, short and unexpected. Come on, let's get you fed before His Majesty decides you're fit for training. Training? You didn't think he'd let you sit idle, did you? Alara hadn't thought about it at all, but now that Marin mentioned it, the idea settled in her chest like a stone. Of course Darius wouldn't let her rest. He didn't deal in charity. Everything had a price. Breakfast was plain: bread, cheese, dried meat, and bitter tea that tasted nothing like the poison-laced drinks she'd been served at home. Alara ate mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She needed a plan. Revenge wasn't enough. She needed strategy, resources, proof, and she needed to find Finn. The vision of her brother haunted her, his bruised face, his shackled wrists, the way he'd called her name like a prayer that would never be answered. She pushed the image away and took another bite of bread. It was stale and hard, but she forced it down anyway. Tell me about the visions. Alara's head jerked up. She hadn't heard Darius enter the room. I thought you were training your men, she said. I was. Now I'm here. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. The wood groaned under his weight. The visions. How do they work? Alara set down her tea. I don't know. They just happen. I see things that haven't occurred yet. Sometimes they're clear. Sometimes they're fragments. Can you control them? No. Can you summon them? No. So they're useless. Alara's jaw tightened. They kept me alive. Barely. Darius leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity she could feel even without sight. If you want revenge, you need more than sporadic visions and blind luck. You need power, real power. And you're going to give that to me? I'm going to teach you how to take it. Alara frowned. What does that mean? It means starting today you train. You learn to fight, to move, to listen. You're blind, not helpless, but right now you're acting like both. The words stung. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to throw something at him. But he was right. She hated that he was right. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. When do we start? Now. Chamatsit. The first session was humiliating. Darius took her to a smaller courtyard, empty except for the two of them. No audience. No witnesses to her failure. Fight me, he said. Alara laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. You're joking. Do I sound like I'm joking? I'm blind. You can't see, Darius interrupted. That doesn't mean you can't fight. Now stop making excuses and try. Alara's hands curled into fist. She wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away. But where would she go? She lunged. It was clumsy and desperate, her arms swinging wildly at where she thought he was. Darius sidestepped easily, and Alara stumbled past him, nearly falling. Pathetic, he said. Alara spun around, fury rising in her chest. I can't see you. Then stop relying on sight. Use your ears, your instincts. I'm not silent. She tried again. This time she listened, heard the shift of his boots against stone, the faint rustle of fabric. She swung. Missed. Darius caught her wrist mid-strike and twisted. Pain shot up her arm and Alara gasped. Predictable, he said, releasing her. You're telegraphing every move. Anyone with eyes could read you. Then teach me, Alara snapped. I am teaching you. You're just not learning fast enough. He moved. She heard it, and something hard slammed into her shoulder. Alara staggered, her breath knocked loose. Again, Darius said. She came at him again and again and again. Each time he dodged or blocked or countered. Each time she ended up on the ground or gasping for air or nursing a new bruise. Her knees hit stone for the 5th time, and Alara stayed down, chest heaving. Get up, Darius said. I can't. You can. You're just choosing not to. I'm exhausted. You think Kyle will care if you're exhausted when he comes for you? Darius's voice was cold. You think your sister will show mercy because you're tired? Get up. Alara's hands balled into fists. She pushed herself to her feet, legs shaking. Good. Now hit me. She swung. He blocked. Harder. She swung again, missed again. You're holding back. Why? I'm not. You are. You're afraid of hurting yourself, afraid of failing. Stop being afraid and fight. Something in Alara snapped. She screamed, raw and furious, and threw herself at him. No technique, no strategy, just rage. Darius caught her easily, but this time he didn't throw her down. He held her there, her fist pounding uselessly against his chest. Better, he said quietly. That's the fire I need to see. Now learn to control it. By the time he finally called a halt, Alara was shaking with exhaustion and rage. You're weak, Darius said bluntly. The poison did more damage than Marin thought. It'll take months to rebuild your strength. I don't have months. Then you'd better work faster. Alara wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him this was impossible, that he was asking too much. But instead she nodded. Because impossible or not, she didn't have a choice. The days blurred together after that. Every morning, Alara trained. Darius was relentless, pushing her past exhaustion, past pain, past the point where her body begged her to stop. He didn't coddle her, didn't offer encouragement. He just demanded more. And somehow, slowly, Alara began to improve. She learned to listen, not just to sound, but to the space between sounds. The way air moved when someone approached. The slight shift in temperature when a body was near. She learned to fall without breaking, to strike without hesitation. She learned to hurt people, and she learned to enjoy it. One morning, she actually landed a hit, her fist connecting with Darius's ribs. It wasn't hard enough to do real damage, but it was enough to make him grunt. Better, he said. It was the closest thing to praise she'd gotten from him. Alara smiled. The visions continued. Some were small, flashes of conversations, glimpses of faces she didn't recognize. Others were vivid and terrible. One night she saw Kyle standing in her empty bedroom, his face twisted with fury. She's alive, he snarled. I know it. Lyra stood beside him, pale and worried. How? The hunters said, I don't care what they said. She's out there, and when I find her, I'll finish this myself. What if she went to the authorities? What if she tells them about... She has no proof, Kyle interrupted. No one will believe a blind woman over me. She's not stupid, Kale. If she escaped, she had help. Then we find out who helped her, and we kill them too. Alara woke gasping, her heart pounding. Kale was looking for her. Of course he was. Tell me. She turned toward Darius's voice. He was sitting in the corner of her room, half hidden in shadow. How long have you been there? Alara demanded. Long enough. What did you see? She told him. When she finished, Darius was sentient for a long moment. He won't find you here, he said finally. Wolfspire is protected. Even if he knew where to look, he'd never make it past the gates. And if he does, then I'll kill him myself. It wasn't a boast, just a fact. Alara exhaled slowly. Why are you helping me? I told you, you're useful. That's not an answer. Darius stood, moving toward the door. Get some sleep, Alara. Tomorrow's going to be worse. He left before she could argue. 2 weeks into her training, the vision of Finn came back. This time, it was clearer. Alara saw the cell, stone walls slick with damp, iron bars rusted and old. Finn was thinner than before, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. He was whispering something over and over. "Alara, please, Alara!" She saw a guard walk past, saw the emblem on his uniform, a serpent coiled around a rose. House Vance. They were keeping him in the family dungeons. The vision shifted. She saw her stepmother, cold and elegant, standing in the corridor outside Finn's cell. "Let him rot," the woman said. "He served his purpose." "And if Alara comes for him," a guard asked, "then we'll have her exactly where we want her." The vision ended. Alara woke with tears streaming down her face. "I know where he is," she told Darius at breakfast. He set down his cup. "Where?" "The dungeon's beneath House Vance. There's a guard, tall, scarred face, serpent emblem on his chest." "Oh, that's half the guards in your family's employ." "Then we narrow it down." Alara leaned forward. "You said if my visions proved useful, you'd help me. This is useful. My brother is alive, and they're torturing him." Darius studied her for a long moment. "Rescuing him means going back into enemy territory, with no guarantee we'll succeed." "I know. It's a trap waiting to happen. I know. And you still want to do this?" "He's my brother," Alara said quietly. "He's the only family I have left who didn't try to kill me. So yes, I still want to do this." Darius exhaled slowly. "Then we do it smart. No charging in blind, no pun intended. We plan, we prepare, and we hit them when they least expect it." Alara nodded, relief flooding through her. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Darius said. "This is going to get ugly." Chat. Planning the rescue took another week. Darius brought in maps of House Vance, detailed layouts of the estate, the dungeons, the guard rotations. Alara didn't ask how he'd obtained them. She didn't care. She studied them by touch, her fingers tracing the raised lines and textures Marin had added to help her navigate. "The dungeons are here," Darius said, guiding her hand to a specific section. 3 levels. If your vision is accurate, your brother's on the lowest one. "How do we get in?" "There's a service entrance on the east side, used by suppliers and servants. It's less guarded, but still risky." "What about the guards?" "We go at night, minimal staff. I'll bring 3 men, enough to handle trouble, not enough to draw attention." Alara shook her head. "I'm coming with you." "No." "He's my brother." "And you're still recovering from being poisoned," Darius interrupted. "You're not ready for a fight." "I don't need to fight. I need to find him. And I'm the only one who knows what he looks like." Darius was silent. "You need me," Alara pressed. "Admit it." "I need you alive," he said finally. "If you come and something goes wrong, then I die, just like I would have if you'd left me in that road." Darius exhaled sharply. "You're infuriating." "So I've been told." Another pause. Then, "Fine. But you follow my orders. No heroics, no improvisation. Understood?" "Understood." Liar, Alara thought, but she kept her mouth shut. They left under cover of darkness. Alara rode in a plain carriage with Darius and his men, 3 soldiers whose names she didn't bother learning. She could feel their skepticism radiating off them in waves. "She's going to get us killed," one of them muttered. "Quiet," Darius said. "With respect, Your Majesty, bringing a blind woman on a rescue mission is—" "I said quiet." Darius's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Or I'll give you something real to complain about." The soldier fell silent. Alara sat rigid in her seat, hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to defend herself, wanted to prove she wasn't a liability. But actions would speak louder than words. The journey took hours. When they finally stopped, Alara could smell it, the familiar scent of the Vance estate. Roses and wood smoke and expensive perfume. It made her stomach turn. "We move fast," Darius said. "Alara stays between me and Garrett. No one engages unless necessary." The men murmured agreement. Alara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. They moved through the dark like ghosts. Alara clung to Garrett's arm, letting him guide her while she focused on listening. Every sound felt amplified. The The crunch of gravel, the distant hoot of an owl, the whisper of wind through trees. The service entrance was exactly where Darius said it would be. One guard stood watch. Darius took him down silently, a hand over his mouth, a blade to his throat. The man crumpled without a sound. Inside, the air was colder, damper. They descended. The dungeon smelled like rot and despair. Alara's stomach churned, but she forced herself to keep moving. Stone stairs spiraled downward, 1 level, then 2, then 3. The air grew thicker with each step, heavy with moisture and decay. "There," Alara whispered, pointing toward a cell at the far end. Darius moved ahead, checking for guards. Found none. The cell door was locked, but one of the soldiers made quick work of it. Metal scraped against metal, and the door swung open with a groan that seemed impossibly loud. And there, hunched in the corner, barely visible in the dim light, was Finn. Alara's breath caught. "Finn," she whispered. He looked up. His face was bruised, his wrists raw from shackles, but his eyes were still the same. "Alara?" His voice cracked. You're dead. They said..." "I'm not dead." She moved forward, her hands finding his face, his shoulders. He was real, solid, alive. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "How?" "Later." "Can you walk?" "I think so." Darius cut through the shackles with a single strike. Finn stumbled to his feet, leaning heavily on Alara. "Let's move," Darius said. They made it halfway up the stairs before the alarm bells started ringing. The sound was deafening, metal clanging against metal, echoing through the dungeons like thunder. "Run!" Darius barked. Alara dragged Finn forward, her heart in her throat. Behind them, she heard shouts, guards pouring into the dungeons. "Intruders! East Wing! Sound the bells! Wake the house!" They burst through the service entrance into the night. Horses were waiting, already saddled. "Get on!" Darius shouted. Alara hauled Finn onto a horse, then climbed up behind him. Garrett pulled her up roughly, and they were moving, galloping through the dark, the estate shrinking behind them. Arrows whistled past. One grazed Alara's arm, and she gasped, pain blooming hot and sharp. "Don't stop!" Darius roared. They didn't. They rode until the estate was nothing but a distant glow on the horizon, until the only sound was hooves and heavy breathing. When they finally slowed, Alara was shaking so hard she could barely hold on. But Finn was alive. They'd done it. Autokos, Ota. Back at Wolfspire, Marin took one look at Finn and immediately ushered him to the infirmary. Alara wanted to follow, but Darius caught her arm. "Not yet. Let Marin work. He's my brother, and he'll still be your brother in an hour. Right now you need to tell me what the hell just happened." Alara frowned. "What do you mean?" "The alarm," Darius said. "It went off too fast. We were careful. No one should have known we were there." "Maybe a guard saw us." "Maybe." But Darius didn't sound convinced. He released her arm and walked away, leaving Alara standing alone in the dark. A chill ran down her spine. Someone had known they were coming, which meant someone at Wolfspire had talked. The next morning, Finn was awake. Alara sat beside his bed, her hand gripping his. "I thought you were dead," he said quietly. "They told me you were dead." "Who told you?" "Stepmother, Lyra, Kyle, all of them." His voice shook. "They locked me down there and said if I ever tried to escape, they'd kill you, so I stayed. I stayed because I thought, it's okay," Alara whispered. "You're safe now." "Am I?" Finn's hand tightened around hers. "Alara, they're not going to stop. Kyle won't stop. Not until you're..." "I know." Alara's voice hardened. "That's why I'm going to destroy him first." Finn was quiet for a long moment. Then, "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." "You're different," Finn said. "You sound angrier." "I am angrier." "Good. You should be." Alara smiled faintly. It felt strange on her face, like a muscle she'd forgotten how to use. "Tell me what happened," she said. "Why did they lock you up?" Finn exhaled slowly. "I overheard them, stepmother and KL. They were talking about the poison, about how long it would take to kill you. I confronted them, told them I'd go to the authorities. And? Kael laughed, said no one would believe a 16-year-old boy over a noble lord. Then stepmother had me arrested, told everyone I'd stolen from the family coffers and run away in shame. Rage burned hot in Alara's chest. How long were you down there? 6 months. Maybe more. I lost track. 6 months. While Alara had been dying slowly upstairs, her brother had been rotting in a cell below. I'm going to make them pay, Alara said quietly. All of them. I'll help you, Finn said. Whatever you need. Right now, I need you to rest. Get your strength back. And then? Then we burn House Vance to the ground. That night, another vision came. This one was the worst yet. Alara saw herself standing in a great hall surrounded by nobles and courtiers. Kael was there, his face twisted with rage. Lyra stood beside him, pale and trembling, and on the floor between them lay a body. Darius. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading. His eyes were open but empty. Alara screamed, tried to run to him, but her legs wouldn't move. Kael smiled. Did you really think you could win? The vision shattered. Alara woke gasping, her whole body drenched in sweat. She found Darius in his study, poring over maps by candlelight. I saw you die, she said without preamble. Darius looked up. When? I don't know. Soon. Kael was there, and Lyra, and... Her voice broke. There was so much blood. Darius set down his quill. How did it happen? I don't know. The vision ended before... Then we prepare for every possibility. He stood, moving toward her. Your visions aren't prophecies, Alara. They're warnings, and warnings can be heeded. What if we can't stop it? Then we make sure I take him down with me. It wasn't comforting, but it was something. Alara nodded slowly. There's a traitor. Someone told them we were coming for Finn. I know. Do you know who? Not yet, but I will. His voice was cold, final. Whoever the traitor was, they were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. The breakthrough came 3 days later. One of Darius's soldiers, a man named Corvin, was found dead in his quarters, poisoned. On his desk was a letter, half-written, addressed to House Vance. Darius burned it without reading the rest. There may be others, he said to Alara that night. I'm tightening security. No one comes in or out without my knowledge. Do you trust anyone? No. Alara almost laughed. Not even me. Darius turned to look at her. In the firelight, his face was all sharp angles and shadow. You're the only one I trust, he said quietly, because you have everything to lose. It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd ever given her, and it terrified her, because Darius Wolf didn't trust easily, which meant if she failed him, if her visions proved false, if her revenge fell apart, she'd lose the only ally she had. Alara swallowed hard. I won't let you down. See that you don't. He left her standing by the fire, her heart pounding and her mind racing. The next morning brought another vision, this one sharper, more immediate. She saw Kael in a council chamber surrounded by other nobles. He was speaking, his voice smooth and convincing. The Alpha King harbors my wife, he said. A woman who has committed treason against House Vance. I demand her return. An older man, gray-haired and stern, shook his head. Without proof, Lord Vance, we cannot compel. I have proof. Kael produced a document. Her own brother's testimony. He confessed to her crimes before he fled. The vision ended. Alara's blood ran cold. They were going to use Finn against her. Somehow, they'd forge his testimony. Make it look like he'd accused her of treason. She found Darius immediately and told him everything. They're coming for me, she said, using the law, using Finn. Then we get ahead of it, Darius replied. Your brother is here, alive. His testimony will disprove whatever lies they've manufactured. Will it be enough? It has to be. But Alara could hear the doubt in his voice. The war with House Vance had begun, and blood was coming. The summons arrived 5 days later. A royal courier delivered it at dawn, sealed with the emperor's crest, heavy parchment that crackled when Darius unfolded it. Alara sat across from him in the study, listening to the silence that followed. What does it say? She asked finally. We're being summoned to the imperial court. 2 weeks from now. Darius's voice was flat. House Vance has filed a formal petition. They're accusing you of theft, conspiracy, and attempted murder of your husband. Alara's hands clenched in her lap. Attempted murder? Apparently you poisoned Kyle's wine before you fled. He's claiming he barely survived. The audacity of it stole her breath. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie. But lies presented well enough become truth. Darius set the summons down. They're also demanding Finn's extradition, claiming he's a fugitive who stole from the family coffers. We have Finn. He can testify. He can try. But he's 16, traumatized, and has no proof beyond his word. Kale is a respected noble with physicians willing to swear they treated him for poisoning. Who do you think the court will believe? Alara's stomach twisted. So we're already dead. Not dead, just outmaneuvered. Darius stood, pacing to the window. They're forcing us into the open, making us play on their ground. Then we don't go. If we don't go, the Emperor issues a warrant. I'd be harboring a known criminal. It would give them legal grounds to move against Wolfspire. So we're trapped. We're cornered, Darius corrected. There's a difference. Alara heard the edge in his voice. Not defeat, but calculation. He was already thinking 3 moves ahead. What do we do? She asked. We go. But we don't go defenseless. He turned back toward her. Your visions. Can you control them at all? Force them to show you something specific? I've tried. They come when they want to. Try harder. We need to know what Kyle's planning, what proof he thinks he has, every advantage he's holding. And if I can't, then we walk into that court blind. Again, no pun intended, and hope we're faster on our feet than they are. It wasn't a plan. It was barely even hope, but it was all they had. Alara spent the next 3 days trying to summon visions. She pushed herself past exhaustion, meditating, focusing, willing the images to come. Marin gave her herbs that were supposed to enhance perception. Darius had her spar until she collapsed, thinking pain might trigger something. Nothing worked. The visions came on their own schedule, as capricious and unreliable as ever. On the 4th night, Alara gave up. She sat in her room, head in her hands, frustration burning through her like fever. A knock at the door. Come in, she said tiredly. Footsteps. Too light to be Darius. Too hesitant to be Marin. Alara? Finn? She lifted her head. You should be resting. I've been resting for 6 months. He sat down beside her. You look terrible. Thank you. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? Alara didn't answer, couldn't remember. Finn was quiet for a moment. Then, they're going to use me against you, aren't they? We won't let them. How? I was locked in a dungeon for half a year. I don't have proof of anything except that I'm exactly what they say I am, a runaway who got caught. You didn't run away. You were imprisoned. Can we prove that? Alara's silence was answer enough. Finn exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't confronted them, don't. Alara's voice was sharp. Don't apologize for trying to save my life. You're the only one who did. And now we're both going to die for it. We're not going to die. You don't know that. No, Alara admitted. But I'm going to fight like hell to make sure we don't. Finn leaned against her shoulder. He felt thinner than she remembered. Frailer. I'm scared, he whispered. Me too. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, and somehow, admitting it made it easier to breathe. The vision came that night, violent, sudden, overwhelming. Alara saw the imperial court, vast and golden, filled with nobles in silk and jewels. She saw herself standing before the emperor, Darius at her side. Kael was there. Lyra, her stepmother, and someone else. A woman Alara didn't recognize, tall, elegant, with silver hair and cold eyes. She wore the robes of a high inquisitor. Lady Vance, the woman said. Her voice was silk over steel. You stand accused of grievous crimes against your lawful husband. How do you plead? Not guilty, Alara heard herself say. Then let us examine the evidence. Kael stepped forward. Your Eminence, I present testimony from my household physician. He will confirm that my wife administered poison to me on 3 separate occasions. A man in healer's robes approached. Alara recognized his voice. Dr. Halverson, the family physician who'd treated her supposed illness for months. The same man who'd probably been helping them poison her. I treated Lord Vance for acute toxin exposure, Halverson said smoothly. The symptoms were consistent with nightshade poisoning. When I questioned him, he revealed his wife had been acting strangely, paranoid, delusional. I believe she was suffering from a mental affliction. Lies. All lies. But presented so smoothly, so convincingly. The vision shifted. The Inquisitor turned to Finn. And you, boy, what do you know of your sister's crimes? Finn's face was pale, terrified. I don't speak truthfully. You were imprisoned for theft, were you not? No, they locked me up because because you knew your sister was plotting against her husband? The Inquisitor's voice was gentle, coaxing. It's all right. You can tell the truth now. You're safe. That's not... But the vision was already shifting again. This time Alara saw Darius standing rigid, his jaw clenched. You would accuse a member of the imperial nobility based on the testimony of a disgraced physician and a traumatized child? He said coldly. I accuse her based on evidence, Kael replied. Evidence I'm prepared to present. He produced a letter. Alara's stomach dropped. She recognized the handwriting, her own. This letter, Kael said, was written by my wife 3 months ago. In it, she confesses her intent to poison me and take control of House Vance. Let me see that, Darius demanded. But the Inquisitor was already reading it aloud, and the words sounded exactly like something Alara might write, except she'd never written them. The vision ended. Alara jerked awake, gasping. Forged evidence. They had forged evidence in her own handwriting. She found Darius immediately and told him everything. A letter, he said quietly. In your handwriting. I never wrote it, I swear. I believe you, but proving it's forged will be nearly impossible, especially if they have a handwriting expert willing to testify it's genuine. Then what do we do? Darius was silent for a long moment. We attack from a different angle. If we can prove Kael was the one poisoning you, if we can get evidence of his conspiracy with Lyra and your stepmother, it discredits everything he's claiming. How do we get that evidence? We go back to House Vance. Alara's blood ran cold. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's the only move they won't expect. Darius leaned forward. They think we're cornered. Think we'll show up at court and try to argue our way out. They're not prepared for us to go on the offensive. You want to break into their estate again? No, I want to walk in the front door. Alara stared at him. You've lost your mind. Probably, but think about it. Kael believes you're hiding, believes you're weak and scared. What if you show up at his door, bold, alive, and demanding answers? It'll shake him, make him sloppy. Or he'll kill me on sight. Not if you're under my protection. Not if I'm standing right beside you. You're betting everything on him being too proud to murder me in front of witnesses. I'm betting on him being too arrogant to see the trap until it's sprung. It was insane, reckless, exactly the kind of bold, impossible move that might actually work. When do we leave? Alara asked. Darius smiled, sharp and dangerous. Tomorrow night. But they rode to House Vance with an escort of 20 soldiers, not an army, but enough to make a statement. Alara wore a dress Marin had chosen, deep crimson, elegant, nothing like the plain clothes she'd fled in. Her hair was pinned up, her face was clean. She looked like nobility, like someone who belonged. Remember, Darius said as they approached the gates, you're not here to beg. You're here to accuse. Make him defend himself. And if he doesn't take the bait, he will. Men like Kael can't resist defending their honor. The gates of House Vance loomed ahead, tall and familiar and suffocating. Alara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Guards stopped them at the entrance. State your business, one demanded. Tell Lord Kael that his wife has come home, Darius said, and that the Alpha King demands an audience. The guard hesitated, then disappeared inside. Minutes crawled past. Finally, the gates opened. They were led through the gardens, past roses Alara had once loved, past fountains she'd trailed her fingers through when she could still see. Every step felt like walking into her own grave. Kael was waiting in the main hall. Alara could hear it in the sudden silence, the way conversation stopped, the way footsteps froze. She couldn't see the faces staring at her, but she could feel them. Shocked, scandalized, horrified. The dead wife had returned. Alara. Kael's voice was smooth. Too smooth. What a surprise. Is it? Alara kept her chin up, her voice steady. You've been searching for me, haven't you? Searching for my wife? Of course. I've been worried sick. Liar. The word fell like a stone into water. Gasps rippled through the room. I know what you did, Alara continued. I know about the poison, about Lyra, about Finn locked in your dungeons for months. You're unwell, Kael said, his voice taking on a patronizing edge. Doctor, Halverson warned me you were suffering delusions. The only delusion was thinking you ever loved me. Alara, please, you're embarrassing yourself. Am I? She took a step forward. Or am I embarrassing you? Darius's hand touched her elbow, a warning. Don't push too hard, not yet. But Alara was done being careful. You tried to kill me, she said clearly. You and Lyra poisoned me for months. And when that wasn't fast enough, you planned to finish me off and take my inheritance. These are serious accusations, Kael said. His voice was still calm, but Alara could hear the tension underneath. Do you have proof? I have my brother, alive, despite your claims that he ran away. Your brother is a thief. My brother is a witness, and he's going to tell the Imperial Court exactly what you did. Finally, she heard it. The crack in Kael's composure. You don't know what you're doing, he said quietly. Don't I? You think the Alpha King will protect you forever? You think anyone will believe a blind woman over me? I think they'll believe evidence, Darius cut in, which is why we're here to collect it. Kael laughed. You have no authority here. Actually, I do. As an Alpha King summoned to Imperial Court, I have the right to investigate crimes that fall under my jurisdiction. Your wife is currently under my protection, which makes her my jurisdiction. It was a legal stretch, barely within the bounds of Imperial law, but it was enough to make Kael hesitate. You can't just, I can, and I am. Now, we can do this cooperatively, or we can do this with Imperial guards. Your choice. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Kael spoke. Fine. Search whatever you want. You won't find anything. Because he'd already hidden it, or destroyed it. Alara knew that, but she also knew something Kael didn't. She knew where to look. The vision had shown her, not clearly, not perfectly, but enough. A study on the 3rd floor. A locked drawer in Kael's desk. Papers hidden beneath a false bottom. Correspondence between Kael and Lyra. Records of poison purchases. Dr. Halverson's notes on dosages. Everything they needed. Darius's men searched the house methodically. Alara waited in the main hall, listening to doors open and close, to Kael's increasingly agitated pacing. This is a waste of time, he muttered. Then you have nothing to worry about, Alara replied. Footsteps on the stairs. Running. One of Darius's soldiers appeared. Your Majesty, we found something. Kael went very still. They brought the papers down, a stack of letters, receipts, physician's notes. Darius read through them quickly, his expression darkening. Well, he said quietly, this is damning. Those are forgeries, Kael said immediately. Are they? Because this one is dated 6 months ago, and it details exact dosages of nightshade to be administered to Lady Vance, signed by Dr. Halverson. Anyone could have written that. And this one, Darius continued, holding up another letter. From Lyra to you, discussing how to dispose of Alara's body once the poison finished its work. The room had gone deathly silent. Alara's hands were shaking. She forced them still. Where's Lyra? She asked quietly. She's not here, Kael said. Where? I don't. Where's my sister? Alara's voice rose. A door opened somewhere above them. Footsteps. Then Lyra's voice, high and panicked. Kael, what's happening? Why are there soldiers? She stopped. Alara couldn't see her, but she could imagine it. Lyra frozen at the top of the stairs, staring down at the ghost she thought was dead. Hello, Lyra, Alara said softly. You're alive. Yes, disappointing, isn't it? This is a mistake, Lyra said quickly.
Kael, tell them, shut up,
Kael snapped.
Too late. The panic in Lyra's voice had already sealed it. Darius folded the letters carefully. Lord Kael Vance, Lady Lyra Vance, you're both under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy. You'll be held until the Imperial Court convenes. You can't arrest me, Kael snarled. I'm a noble, and I'm an Alpha King. Watch me. Guards moved forward. Kael lunged, not at them, but at Alara. Darius was faster. He stepped between them, his hand catching Kael's wrist mid-swing. The crack of bone was audible. Kael screamed. Touch her again, Darius said quietly, and I'll do worse than break your wrist. Alara stood frozen, her heart pounding. She'd done it. They'd actually done it. But the victory was short-lived, because that night, another vision came. Alara saw the Imperial Court again, saw herself standing before the Inquisitor, but this time there was someone else, her stepmother. The woman stood calm and composed, her hands folded elegantly. When she spoke, her voice was smooth as silk. Your Eminence, I'm afraid my daughter and son-in-law have been falsely accused. The evidence against them was planted by Lady Alara herself, with the help of the Alpha King.
That's absurd, Darius said in the vision. Is it? Lady Alara has been living under your roof for weeks. She's had ample time to forge documents, to create false testimony. And you, Your Majesty, you have a vested interest in discrediting House Vance. We all know about the trade disputes between our houses. The Inquisitor's expression didn't change. Continue. I believe Lady Alara orchestrated this entire scheme. The alleged poisoning, her brother's supposed imprisonment, all of it designed to seize control of House Vance's assets with the Alpha King's help. And what proof do you have of this? The stepmother smiled. I have a witness, someone who saw Lady Alara and the Alpha King conspiring together, someone willing to testify under oath. A figure stepped forward, Dr. Marin. Alara's blood ran cold. I'm sorry, Marin said in the vision, her voice soft, but I can't lie for you anymore. The vision shattered. Alara woke gasping, her whole body shaking. Marin, the woman who'd saved her life, the woman she'd trusted, was going to betray her. She confronted Marin at dawn. Is it true? Alara demanded. Are you working for them? Marin looked up from her workbench, startled. What are you talking about? I saw you, in a vision, testifying against me at the Imperial Court. Marin went very still. I'm not... Alara, I would never... Then why did I see it? I don't know. Your visions aren't always... They've been right about everything else. Not everything, Marin said quietly. You saw Darius die, remember? And he's still alive. Alara faltered. That was true. The vision of Darius bleeding out on the floor hadn't come to pass. Yet. I'm not your enemy, Marin said. I swear on my life. Then swear on something that matters more. Marin flinched. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone. Alara's voice broke. I can't afford to. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Marin spoke. If I were going to betray you, I would have done it already. I've had dozens of chances, but I'm still here, still helping you. Why? Because what they did to you was wrong, and because I'm tired of watching powerful men destroy women and walk away unpunished. It sounded true, but Alara had believed lies before. I'll be watching you, she said quietly. I know. Alara left before the doubt could eat her alive. The Imperial Court convened exactly 2 weeks after the summons arrived. The journey to the capital took 3 days. Alara spent most of it in silence, her mind racing through every possible outcome. Darius had assured her they had enough evidence, that Kael's guilt was undeniable, but evidence could be twisted, witnesses could be bought. And her stepmother was the kind of woman who always had a contingency plan. The Imperial Palace was overwhelming, even for someone who couldn't see it. Elara could feel the space vast and echoing, could smell the incense and expensive perfume, could hear the whispers that followed her like ghosts. The blind wife who came back from the dead. The trial began at noon. Elara stood before the emperor, an old man whose voice was surprisingly strong, and the High Inquisitor, the silver-haired woman from her vision. Kael and Lyra were there, flanked by guards. Her stepmother sat in the gallery, serene and untouchable. "Lady Elara Vance," the Inquisitor began, "you stand accused of poisoning your husband, conspiring against House Vance, and forging evidence to support false claims. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Eminence." "And you, Lord Vance? How do you answer Lady Elara's counter-accusations?" "Not guilty," Kael said smoothly. "My wife is unwell. She's been suffering delusions for months. I have medical testimony to support this." "Then let us hear it." Dr. Halverson stepped forward. Elara's hands clenched. This was it, the moment everything would fall apart or come together. "I treated Lady Vance for several months," Halverson said. "She exhibited signs of paranoia, hallucinations, and irrational behavior. I believe she was suffering from a mental affliction, possibly brought on by the trauma of losing her sight." "And the poison?" the Inquisitor asked. "I found no evidence of poisoning in Lady Vance. However, I did treat Lord Vance for toxin exposure on 3 occasions." Murmurs rippled through the court. "Administered by his wife?" the Inquisitor pressed. Halverson hesitated. "I cannot say with certainty." "Cannot? Or will not?" "I can only report what I observed." Darius stood. "Your Eminence, I'd like to submit evidence." He presented the letters they'd found, the correspondence between Kael and Lyra, the poison receipts, Halverson's own notes on dosages. The court fell silent as the Inquisitor read. When she looked up, her expression was cold. "Dr. Halverson, are these your notes?" Halverson's face went pale. Those are... Answer the question." "Yes, but... And this letter? The one discussing exact dosages of nightshade to be administered to Lady Vance? It was theoretical. Theoretical." The Inquisitor's voice could have frozen fire. "You theoretically planned to poison a noblewoman? No! I was forced..." "By whom?" Halverson's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Kael. Kael's expression was murderous. "By Lord Vance," Halverson whispered finally. "He threatened my family, said if I didn't help, he'd..." "Liar!" Kael roared. "You lying piece of..." "Silence," the Inquisitor commanded. But Kael was already moving. He lunged at Halverson, hands outstretched. Guards grabbed him, dragged him back. And in the chaos, Elara heard it. Her stepmother's voice, soft and poisonous. "Kael, you fool." Because Kael's outburst had just destroyed any credibility he had left. The trial continued for another hour, but the outcome was already decided. Kael and Lyra were found guilty, sentenced to imprisonment and forfeiture of all assets. House Vance was dissolved. Elara stood in the center of the courtroom, listening to the judgment, and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just emptiness. She'd won, but it felt like losing. Darius found her afterward, standing alone in a corridor. "You did it," he said quietly. "Did I?" "Kael's finished. Lyra's finished. Your stepmother will be investigated next. And Finn?" "Exonerated, free." Elara nodded slowly. She should feel relieved, should feel vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. "There's something else," Darius said. Elara turned toward him. "What?" "The Emperor wants to speak with you, privately." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "I don't know. But when the Emperor summons you, you go, Shem." The Emperor received her in a small chamber, intimate, quiet, away from the chaos of the court. Elara knelt when instructed, her heart pounding. "Rise, Lady Vance." She stood. "You've caused quite a stir," the Emperor said. His voice was warm, almost amused. "A blind woman, bringing down one of the oldest noble houses in the Empire. Impressive." "I only sought justice, Your Majesty." "Justice." He seemed to taste the word. "Tell me, What do you plan to do now? Alara hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know, Your Majesty. House Vance's assets are forfeit. That includes substantial land holdings, trade contracts, and a fortune in gold. As the wronged party, you have a legal claim to all of it. Alara's breath caught. I don't want their money. Don't be foolish. Money is power, and you're going to need power for what comes next. What comes next? The Emperor was quiet for a moment. Then, the Alpha King has proposed a marriage contract between you and him. The world tilted. What? It's a sound political move. Unites his territory with your newly acquired holdings. Solidifies both your positions. Did Darius agree to this? He proposed it. Alara's mind was reeling. Why would he? You'd have to ask him, but I'll tell you this. I'm inclined to approve it, if you consent. And if I don't? Then you walk away with your fortune and your freedom. But you'll be alone, vulnerable. There are plenty of nobles who'll see you as an easy target. It wasn't a threat, just reality. Alara's hands were shaking. Marry Darius, the man who'd saved her, trained her, stood beside her through everything, the man she didn't trust, the man she couldn't afford to trust. I need time to think, she whispered. You have 3 days. Then I'll need your answer. Alara was dismissed. She walked out of that chamber in a daze, her mind spinning. And when she found Darius waiting in the hall, she didn't know whether to thank him or slap him. You proposed a marriage contract? She said quietly. Darius looked at her steadily. Yes. Without asking me first? Would you have agreed if I'd asked? No. Exactly. He stepped closer. Alara, whether you like it or not, you're a target now. Wealthy, alone, and blind. Every ambitious noble in the empire will be circling you within a month. So you're protecting me again. I'm offering you a partnership, one where we both benefit. That's not a marriage. That's a business arrangement. Most marriages are. Alara wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him he had no right. But he did have a right, because without him, she'd be dead. I need time to think, she said finally. 3 days. I know. And if I say no? Darius was silent for a long moment. Then I respect your decision, and we part ways. Just like that? Just like that. He walked away, leaving Alara standing alone in the corridor. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she had no idea what to do next. Alara spent that first night alone, pacing her chambers until her feet ached. Marriage, to Darius. The idea felt impossible and inevitable at the same time, like standing at the edge of a cliff knowing the only way forward was to jump. She'd never wanted this. Never wanted to belong to anyone again after Kael. The thought of binding herself to another man, even one who'd saved her life, made her skin crawl. But Darius was right about one thing. Alone, she was vulnerable. Wealthy and blind and female in a world that saw all three as weaknesses to exploit. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she said tiredly. Footsteps. Light and familiar. Finn. Her brother crossed the room and sat beside her. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. Because of the marriage proposal. Word traveled fast. You heard about that? Everyone's heard about that. The servants won't stop whispering. Finn paused. Are you going to say yes? I don't know. Do you trust him? Alara laughed bitterly. No, but I don't trust anyone. That's not true. You trust me. You're different. How? You never tried to use me. Finn was quiet for a moment. Darius could have left you in that road, could have turned you over to Kael a dozen times. He didn't. Because I'm useful to him. Maybe. Or maybe he actually gives a damn. Alara shook her head. Men like Darius don't give a damn about anyone except themselves. Men like Kael, you mean? The correction stung because it was accurate. She'd been so hurt by Kael's betrayal that she'd started seeing every man through that same poisoned lens. But Darius wasn't Kael. He was cold, calculating, and ruthless, but he'd never lied to her. Never pretended to be something he wasn't. That had to count for something. What do you think I should do? Alara asked quietly. Finn took her hand. I think you should do whatever makes you feel safest. And if that's saying no and walking away, then walk away. You've earned that right. And if I say yes, then you make sure it's on your terms, not his, not the Emperor's, yours. Alara squeezed his hand. When did you get so wise? 6 months in a dungeon gives you a lot of time to think. They sat together in silence until the candles burned low. And slowly, painfully, Alara began to see a path forward. Not the one she wanted, but the one she needed. She found Darius the next morning in the palace training yard. He was sparring with one of his soldiers, brutal, efficient movements that spoke of decades of practice. Alara listened to the rhythm of it, the clash of steel, the grunt of effort. When they finished, Darius dismissed the soldier and turned toward her. You've made a decision, he said. Not a question. I have conditions, Alara replied. Of course you do. First, this is a political alliance, nothing more. I won't share your bed unless I choose to. Agreed. The speed of his answer surprised her. Just like that? I'm not interested in forcing myself on an unwilling wife. That's Kael's game, not mine. Alara's shoulders relaxed slightly. Second, I want full access to House Vance's assets, not as your property, as mine, separately held. The lawyers won't like that. I don't care what the lawyers like. That's my condition. Darius was quiet for a moment. Then, agreed. Anything else? Third, Finn comes with us, to Wolfspire. And you treat him like family, not a prisoner or a burden. He's your brother. He was always going to come with us. And fourth, Alara took a breath. If I ever want to leave, you let me go. No arguments, no legal battles. You just let me go. This time the silence stretched longer. That's a dangerous condition, Darius said finally. It gives you all the power. Good, because I've spent too long being powerless. And if I refuse, then I refuse your proposal. And we both lose. Darius exhaled slowly. You drive a hard bargain. I learned from the best. Flattery won't change my answer. What is your answer? Yes, Darius said quietly. To all of it, on one condition of my own. Alara tensed. Which is? You give this a real chance. Not forever, just a chance. Don't walk in already planning your exit. It was fair, more than fair, actually. All right, Alara said, I can do that. Then we have a deal. He held out his hand. Alara found it, her fingers closing around his. The handshake felt like a contract written in something more permanent than ink. I'll inform the Emperor, Darius said. Wait. Alara's grip tightened. There's something else. Something I need to know. What? Why did you propose this, really? Not the political reasons. The real reason. Darius was silent for so long, Alara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you're the first person in a decade who's looked at me and seen something other than a weapon or a crown, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep that. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was honest, and honesty, Alara was learning, was rarer than love. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do this. The wedding took place 3 days later. It was a small ceremony, nothing like the grand spectacle Alara's first wedding had been. Just the Emperor, a handful of witnesses, and the priest who bound their hands with silk cord. Alara wore a simple dress. No veil, no flowers. She wasn't a bride. She was a woman making a calculated decision to survive. Darius's hand was steady in hers as they spoke the vows. His voice was calm, controlled. Everything Kael's had pretended to be and wasn't. When it was done, the Emperor smiled. Well then, I pronounce you husband and wife. Long may your alliance prosper. Alliance, not marriage. The Emperor understood exactly what this was. Afterward, there was a small reception. Nobles Alara didn't know offering congratulations she didn't want. She smiled and nodded and said all the right things while her mind was elsewhere. Finn stayed close, a solid presence at her elbow. You all right? He whispered. Ask me in a year. He laughed quietly. Fair enough. Across the room, Alara heard Darius speaking with one of his advisors. The man's voice was low but clear. Your Majesty, there are concerns about the merger of assets.
House Vance's holdings are substantial, but they're also contested. Several noble families are claiming they have rights to portions of the estate. Let them claim, Darius said coldly. We have the Emperor's backing and legal precedent. Anyone who challenges us will lose. And Lady Alara? How much authority will she have? Full authority over her inherited assets. I've already signed the documents. The advisor sounded shocked. You're giving her independent control. I'm honoring an agreement. There's a difference. Alara felt something shift in her chest. He'd actually done it, kept his word without her having to fight for it. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster after all. They left the capital the next morning. The journey back to Wolfspire took 4 days. Alara spent most of it silent, processing everything that had happened in the past month. A month ago, she'd been dying. Now she was an alpha queen with a fortune and a husband she didn't hate. The transformation felt surreal. On the third night, Darius joined her by the campfire. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much on my mind. Want to talk about it? Alara almost laughed. When did you become interested in talking? When I married someone who might actually have something interesting to say. She did laugh then, short and surprised. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle. What happens now? Alara asked finally. Now we consolidate power. Make it clear that House Wolf Vance is not to be trifled with. House Wolf Vance? You didn't think I'd erase your name completely, did you? You earned it. By almost dying? By surviving. Darius shifted. Most people in your position would have given up, accepted their fate. You didn't. I was too angry to give up. Anger's a powerful motivator, but it won't sustain you forever. What will? That's what you need to figure out. Alara turned toward him. What sustains you? Darius was quiet for a long moment. Duty. Responsibility. The knowledge that if I fail, thousands of people suffer. That sounds exhausting. It is. Do you ever want to just walk away from it all? Every day. But you don't. No, because walking away would make me a coward, and I've worked too hard to be anything else. Alara understood that. The need to prove yourself, to be more than what people expected. I'm glad you didn't leave me in that road, she said quietly. So am I. It was the closest thing to sentiment Darius had ever offered. Alara decided not to push for more. They arrived at Wolfspire to chaos. Messengers were waiting with reports of attacks on the border, raiders targeting supply caravans, villages burned. When did this start? Darius demanded. 3 days ago, Your Majesty. We sent word to the capital, but I was getting married. Darius's jaw tightened. How many dead? 15 so far, mostly guards and merchants. And the raiders? Unknown origin. They're not wearing any identifiable markers. But Alara knew. She knew before the vision even came. That night, it hit her like a hammer. She saw her stepmother, still free, still untouchable, meeting with a scarred man in a dark room. Burn his holdings, the stepmother said. Make him regret taking everything from my family. And the girl? If she dies in the chaos, so be it. I'll mourn appropriately. The vision ended. Alara found Darius immediately. It's my stepmother, she said. She's behind the attacks. Darius didn't question it. You're sure? I saw her, hiring the raiders, targeting your territory. Our territory, Darius corrected. You're Lady Wolf now. What happens to Wolfspire happens to you. The weight of that settled on Alara's shoulders. People were dying because of her, because her stepmother wanted revenge. We need to stop her, Alara said. The Emperor cleared her of wrongdoing. We have no legal grounds to arrest her. Then we don't use legal grounds. We use mine. Darius looked at her sharply. What are you proposing? I'm proposing we beat her at her own game. She wants to destroy us quietly. We expose her publicly, show everyone exactly what kind of woman she is. How? Alara smiled, sharp and cold. Leave that to me. The plan took 2 weeks to arrange. Alara reached out to every contact she had, former servants from House Vance, merchants who'd done business with her stepmother, nobles who'd been burned by the woman's schemes. She collected testimony, evidence, stories of bribery, blackmail, and cruelty stretching back decades. Her
Her stepmother had made a lot of enemies, and Alara was going to give them all a voice. The imperial court reconvened for a special session. Alara stood before the same inquisitor who'd judged Kyle, her hand steady. "Your Eminence, I'm here to present new evidence regarding my stepmother, Lady Helena Vance, evidence of crimes that extend far beyond her daughter's conspiracy." The inquisitor's expression didn't change. "Proceed." Alara called her witnesses one by one. A merchant who testified that Helena had blackmailed him into selling underpriced goods to House Vance for years. A former servant who had been beaten for refusing to lie under oath. A noble whose daughter had been ruined by Helena's lies, driving the girl to take her own life. Each testimony was damning. Each one painted a picture of a woman who'd built her power on suffering. When the last witness finished, the court was silent. Helena sat in the gallery, her face a mask of composure. But Alara could hear it, the slight tremor in her breathing, the crack forming in her armor. "Lady Helena," the inquisitor said, "how do you answer these accusations?" Helena stood gracefully. "They're lies. Fabrications created by a vindictive stepdaughter who's never forgiven me for marrying her father. And the witnesses? Paid actors, or people with grudges. I'm not surprised Lady Alara found them. She's proven quite adept at manipulation." "I haven't manipulated anyone," Alara said quietly. "I've just given people permission to tell the truth." "Truth?" Helena's voice turned sharp. "You speak of truth? A girl who murdered her own husband." "I was acquitted of that," Alara interrupted. "Kyle confessed, remember? Because you forced him to." "No, because he was guilty." The inquisitor raised a hand. "Silence, both of you." Helena's mouth snapped shut. "I've heard enough," the inquisitor said. "Lady Helena Vance, you are hereby charged with conspiracy, blackmail, and reckless endangerment. You will be held pending further investigation." Helena's composure finally shattered. "This is absurd. I demand—" "You demand nothing," the inquisitor said coldly. "Guards, remove her." They dragged Helena out, struggling, screaming, her carefully constructed mask torn away. Alara stood perfectly still, listening to the woman's fury echo through the chamber. And felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that justice, however imperfect, had finally been served. "Ishard saw it?" "Yes, sir." The attack stopped within days. With Helena imprisoned, the raiders lost their funding and scattered. Wolfspire's borders stabilized. Trade resumed. And slowly, cautiously, Alara began to breathe again. She was sitting in Darius's study one evening when he handed her a letter. "What is this?" she asked. "Read it." Alara ran her fingers over the raised seal. "Imperial crest." "I can't read it. It's not in Braille." "Right. Sorry." Darius cleared his throat. "It's from the Emperor. He's formally recognizing you as Lady Wolf and granting you a seat on the Northern Council." Alara's breath caught. "A council seat? You're a landowner now, a noble in your own right. You've earned it. But I'm blind? Yes, and brilliant. The Emperor's not stupid. He knows what you did, how you dismantled House Vance from the inside, how you exposed Helena. He wants that kind of strategic mind working for him." Alara's hands were shaking. "I don't know anything about politics." "You know how to survive. That's more than most politicians can say." "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse. But I think you'd be good at this. Better than you realize." Alara was quiet for a long moment. A council seat. Power. Real power. Not borrowed. Not dependent on a husband or a family name. Hers. "I'll do it," she said finally. Darius smiled. She could hear it in his voice. "Good. Because I already accepted on your behalf." Alara threw a cushion at him. "You what?" "I had faith in you." "You're impossible." "So I've been told." But Alara was smiling too. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future didn't feel like a trap. It felt like possibility. The first council meeting was brutal. Alara sat among men twice her age who clearly resented her presence. She couldn't see their faces, but she didn't need to. Their voices said everything, dismissive, condescending, annoyed. "Lady Wolf," one of them said, Lord Garrett, from his accent.
While we appreciate your unique perspective, perhaps you should leave the more complex matters to those with experience. Complex matters like trade negotiations? Alara asked mildly. Or taxation policy? Both. I ran House Vance's accounts for 3 years before my husband tried to murder me. I think I can handle complex matters. Silence. Furthermore, Alara continued, I've been reviewing the Northern Territory's grain imports. We're overpaying by at least 30%. I've drafted a proposal to renegotiate our contracts with the southern provinces. She slid a stack of papers across the table, papers she'd had a scribe prepare based on her calculations. This is, Lord Garrett paused, actually quite thorough. I know. Another council member spoke up. And the border security concerns? How do you propose we address those? Increase patrols along the Eastern Pass, better fortifications at key choke points, and intelligence networks to identify threats before they materialize. I've outlined it all in Section 3. More silence. Finally, the council head, an older man named Lord Bram, spoke. Well, it seems Lady Wolfe has done her homework. I always do, Alara said. She could feel the shift in the room, the grudging respect replacing dismissal. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. That night, Darius found her in the library. I heard you impressed the council today, he said. I survived the council today. There's a difference. You did more than survive. Lord Bram sent me a note. He said you're the sharpest mind they've had in years. Alara's cheeks flushed. He's exaggerating. He's not. And you know it. She did know it, but admitting it felt dangerous, like inviting the universe to take it all away again. Thank you, she said quietly, for pushing me into this. You would have gotten there on your own eventually. Maybe, but it helped having someone believe I could. Darius sat down beside her. I meant what I said. On our wedding day, you're the first person in a long time who's made me feel like something other than a title. What do I make you feel like? A person. A flawed, complicated person, instead of the alpha king who has to be perfect all the time. Alara understood that better than he knew. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. The vision I had of you dying, it hasn't happened. No. Why do you think that is? Darius was quiet. Maybe because we changed something, made different choices. Or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Or maybe your visions show possibilities, not certainties. Ways things could go if we're not careful. Alara wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she had more control than she'd thought. I'm scared, she admitted, that I'll lose this, that it'll all fall apart again. It might, Darius said honestly. Life doesn't come with guarantees, but we'll face it together. That's the deal we made. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. Alara leaned against his shoulder. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. They sat like that for a long time. Two people who'd been broken, learning to be whole again. And for the first time since Kael had betrayed her, Alara felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. 3 months later, Alara received word that her stepmother had been sentenced to life imprisonment. No execution, no dramatic end, just a quiet removal from the world she'd tried so hard to control. Alara felt nothing when she heard. No relief, no vindication. Helena was simply gone. Another ghost laid to rest. That same week, Finn was officially recognized as lord of a small estate Darius had purchased for him. A fresh start, a chance to build something that wasn't tainted by House Vance's legacy. I don't deserve this, Finn said when Alara told him. Yes, you do. You survived hell and came out still kind. That's worth rewarding. He hugged her tight. Thank you for everything. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never. And Alara believed him. The council meetings continued. Alara's proposals were slowly implemented. She learned to navigate the politics, to read the room without seeing it, to wield power like a scalpel instead of a hammer. She was good at it, better than anyone expected, including herself. One evening, as she walked through Wolfspire's gardens, Darius found her. The Emperor wants to meet with us, he said. Next month. He's calling a summit of all the regional leaders. What for? To discuss the future of the Empire, and apparently he wants you there.
Me, specifically? You specifically. You've made an impression, Alara smiled. A good one, I hope. The best kind. The kind that makes people nervous. They walked in comfortable silence, the evening air cool against Ilara's skin. I've been thinking, Darius said eventually, about what you said, on our wedding night, about giving this a real chance. Ilara's heart skipped. And? I think I'm ready. If you are. She knew what he was asking, not for a political alliance, for something real. Ilara stopped walking, turned toward him. I'm ready, she said. Darius's hand found hers, warm, solid, real. And when he kissed her, gentle, asking permission, Ilara kissed him back. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. The broken girl who'd thrown herself in front of a carriage was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned to fight, to survive, to win. And the war wasn't over yet. But for the first time, Ilara knew she was strong enough to face whatever came next. The Emperor's Summit was held in the ancient city of Astravon, a place Ilara had only heard about in stories. They said its towers touched the clouds, that its halls were carved from white marble so pure it glowed in moonlight. Ilara would never see any of it, but she could feel the weight of the place as their carriage rolled through the gates. The air was different here, thicker, charged with power and history and the ghosts of 1,000 political games. Nervous? Darius asked beside her. Terrified, Ilara admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Is that your motto? One of them. They were shown to quarters in the eastern wing, lavish rooms that smelled of incense and old wood. Ilara ran her fingers along the walls, mapping the space in her mind. The summit begins tomorrow, Darius said. There will be at least 50 regional leaders. Some will be allies, most won't be. And the Emperor? He'll be watching, evaluating, deciding who's useful and who's expendable. Comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to prepare you. Ilara turned toward his voice. What if I fail? Then we both fail, together. Darius crossed to her, his hand finding her shoulder. But you won't fail. You're too stubborn for that. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the confidence he seemed to have in her, but doubt was a persistent whisper in her mind, reminding her of every mistake, every moment of weakness. Get some rest, Darius said. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. He wasn't wrong. None. The summit hall was enormous. Ilara could tell from the way sound echoed, from the countless footsteps and murmured conversations that filled the space. She sat beside Darius at a long table, her hands folded in her lap, her posture perfect. She'd learned to project confidence even when she felt none. The Emperor entered, and the room fell silent. Lords and ladies of the Empire, he began, his voice carrying effortlessly. We gather today to discuss the future. Our borders are stable, our economy is strong, but complacency breeds weakness. We must evolve or be consumed by those who will. Ilara listened carefully, parsing every word for hidden meaning. To that end, the Emperor continued, I've invited several new voices to this council, voices that represent change, innovation, and the courage to challenge tradition when tradition fails us. He paused. Lady Ilara Wolf, please stand. Ilara's heart stopped. Darius's hand brushed hers, a silent reassurance, and she pushed herself to her feet. Lady Wolf has accomplished something remarkable, the Emperor said. She's transformed House Vance from a corrupt dynasty into a model of accountability and justice. She's brought fresh perspective to the Northern Council and demonstrated that leadership is not about sight, it's about vision. Murmurs rippled through the hall, not all approving. Today, I'm elevating her to the rank of Imperial Advisor. Her counsel will be sought on matters of law, justice, and regional governance. Ilara's breath caught. Imperial Advisor, a position that carried more power than most noble titles, a position that made her untouchable. Thank you, Your Majesty, she managed. Her voice didn't shake, barely. Don't thank me yet, the Emperor said, and there was amusement in his tone. You're about to earn it. Ilara sat down slowly, her mind reeling. Across the table she'd heard a familiar voice, cold and sharp. Lord Brennan, one of Kael's former allies. Your Majesty,
With respect, Lady Wolf is a controversial choice. Her methods have been unorthodox. Some might say ruthless. And your point? The Emperor asked mildly. My point is that elevating someone so divisive sends a dangerous message. It suggests that the ends justify the means. They do, Alara said before she could stop herself. The room went silent.
Excuse me? Brennan's voice was ice. Alara stood again. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them steady. The ends do justify the means, she said clearly, when the means are exposing corruption, when the means are protecting the innocent, when the means are ensuring justice is served instead of buried. You speak of justice? Brennan laughed. You destroyed House Vance, a family that served the Empire for generations, over personal grievances. I exposed criminals, Alara corrected. Criminals who poisoned me, imprisoned my brother, and murdered others who threatened their power. If that's divisive, so be it. And what of your marriage to the Alpha King, a convenient alliance that consolidated immense wealth and power? Some might call that opportunistic. Some might call survival opportunistic, Alara shot back. I'd call it smart. Murmurs of approval now. Not everyone in the room hated her. Lady Wolf, the Emperor said, Lord Brennan raises an interesting point. How do you respond to accusations that your rise to power has been built on manipulation rather than merit? Alara took a breath. This was the test. This was what everything had been leading to. Your Majesty, she said slowly, I was born into privilege. I lost my sight to illness, my husband to betrayal, and my family to greed. I was poisoned, hunted, and left for dead. Everything I have now, I earned by refusing to die quietly. She turned toward where she thought Brennan was sitting. You call that manipulation? I call it refusing to let powerful men write my ending for me. And if that offends you, Lord Brennan, I'd suggest examining why a blind woman's success threatens you so much. The silence that followed was absolute. Then someone started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Well said, Lady Wolf, the Emperor said. You may sit. Alara sank back into her chair, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Darius's hand found hers under the table. He squeezed once. Approval. She'd passed. The rest of the summit was a blur of discussions and debates. Alara contributed when she could, stayed silent when she couldn't, and learned more about imperial politics in 6 hours than she'd learned in a lifetime. By the time evening came, she was exhausted. Darius found her in their quarters, staring out a window she couldn't see through. You were brilliant today, he said. I was terrified. Doesn't make you any less brilliant. Alara turned toward him. Brennan's going to be a problem. Brennan's always been a problem, but he's lost credibility. You made him look petty. I made him look honest. He's right. I did manipulate my way into power. No, Darius said firmly. You fought your way into power. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Manipulation is what Kael did, what your stepmother did. You? You just refused to let them win. Alara wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she was fundamentally different from the people who'd hurt her, but the line felt thinner than she liked to admit. There's something else, Darius said. I received word from Wolfspire. Dr. Marin has been asking to speak with you. Alara stiffened. About what? She wouldn't say, but she said it's urgent. The vision of Marin betraying her flashed through Alara's mind. It hadn't come to pass, but the possibility still haunted her. I don't trust her, Alara said quietly. I know, but she's been loyal so far. Maybe hear her out. Alara exhaled slowly. Fine, but if this is a trap, then we spring it together. They spoke to Marin through a communication crystal, a rare magical artifact that allowed real-time conversations across distances. Marin's voice came through clearly, tinged with urgency. Lady Wolf, thank you for speaking with me. What's this about, Marin? Alara asked. I've been going through the medical records from House Vance, the ones we seized during the trial. And I found something. Evidence that Kael and your stepmother were planning something bigger than just your murder. Alara's blood ran cold. What do you mean? There are letters discussing a plan to poison multiple noble families, consolidate their holdings under House Vance's control. You were just the first target. Silence. How many families? Darius asked sharply. At least 7, maybe more. The correspondence is coded, but I've been able to piece together enough to confirm the scope. Alara felt sick. They were going to kill dozens of people. Yes, and if you hadn't stopped them, they might have succeeded. Where are these letters now? Darius demanded. Locked in my office at Wolfspire. I didn't want to send them through regular channels in case someone intercepted them. Good thinking. We'll return immediately and review them. There's one more thing, Marin said quietly. One of the names mentioned in the letters. It's Lord Brennan. Alara's breath caught. Brennan was a target? Darius said slowly. Or a co-conspirator? The letters are unclear, but his name appears multiple times. After they ended the communication, Alara sat in stunned silence. If Brennan was involved, she said finally, then his attacks on me today weren't about principle. They were about covering his own tracks. Or discrediting you before you could expose him, Darius added. Either way, we need those letters. And if they prove he's guilty, then we destroy him the same way you destroyed Kael. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just felt heavy. Another battle, another enemy. When would it end? They returned to Wolfspire within 2 days, pushing the horses hard. Marin met them in her office, the letters spread across her desk. Alara listened as Darius read them aloud, her hands clenched in her lap. The conspiracy was even worse than Marin had described. House Vance had been planning a systematic takeover, poisoning rivals, forging alliances through blackmail, consolidating power until they controlled half the Empire's wealth. And Brennan's name appeared again and again, not as a victim, as a partner. He helped them, Alara said quietly. Helped them plan it. It looks that way, Marin confirmed. Though proving it will be difficult. The letters are coded, and Brennan will claim they're forgeries. Then we need more than letters, Darius said. We need a confession. How do you propose we get that? Alara asked. Darius smiled, sharp and dangerous. We set a trap. Won't. The trap was simple, but elegant. They sent word to Brennan that they discovered evidence implicating him in House Vance's conspiracy, that they were planning to present it to the Emperor unless he came to Wolfspire to explain himself. Brennan arrived within 3 days, flanked by guards and radiating indignation. This is an outrage, he declared. I demand to see this so-called evidence. Of course, Darius said smoothly. Right this way. They led him to a private study. Alara sat in the corner, silent and still. Darius laid the letters on the desk. Brennan read them, his face going progressively paler. These are forgeries, he said finally. Are they? Darius asked mildly. Obviously. Anyone could have written them and added my name. Even the ones in your handwriting? Brennan's eyes snapped to Darius. What? We had a handwriting expert examine them. 3 of the letters match samples of your writing we obtained from court records. Oh, it was a bluff. They hadn't had time for that level of analysis. But Brennan didn't know that. I was coerced, he stammered. Kael threatened my family. I had no choice. So you admit you were involved? Alara said quietly from the corner. Brennan spun toward her. You set me up. No, I gave you a chance to confess. You took it. Brennan's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? You're nothing but a blind girl playing at power. The moment Darius tires of you, you'll be discarded like the worthless... Darius's fist connected with Brennan's jaw before he could finish. The Lord crumpled, blood streaming from his split lip. Speak to my wife that way again, Darius said coldly, and I'll do worse than break your jaw. Guards entered and hauled Brennan to his feet. You'll be held pending investigation, Darius said. And trust me, the Emperor will hear everything. As they dragged Brennan away, Alara stood slowly. Did we just commit treason? She asked. Technically, maybe. But Brennan confessed. That makes it legal. You're a very flexible interpreter of the law. I learned from the best. Alara smiled despite herself. Yet, the Emperor received their report personally. He read the letters, listened to the recorded confession, another use of the communication crystal, and then sat back in his throne.
Lord Brennan will be stripped of his titles and imprisoned, he said finally. His lands will be redistributed. His family will be investigated. Thank you, Your Majesty, Elara said. Don't thank me. You did the work. I'm simply acknowledging it. The Emperor leaned forward. You've made powerful enemies, Lady Wolf, but you've also made powerful friends. Use both wisely. I will, Your Majesty. As they left the throne room, Darius touched her arm. You realize what this means, don't you? That we've dismantled 2 noble houses in less than a year? That you've become one of the most influential people in the Empire, whether you wanted it or not. Elara hadn't wanted it, but she'd earned it, and she wasn't going to waste it. 3 months later, Elara stood before the Northern Council with a proposal that would have been unthinkable a year ago. I'm proposing we establish a legal aid system, she said clearly. One that provides representation to those who can't afford it. Too many people suffer injustice simply because they lack the resources to fight back. That's a noble sentiment, Lord Bram said carefully. But who would fund such a system? I would, using a portion of the assets I inherited from House Vance. It seems fitting that money built on exploitation should be used to help the exploited. Murmurs around the table. Not all approving, but no one outright objecting. And who would administer this program? Another council member asked. I would. With oversight from the council, of course. I'm not asking for unchecked power. I'm asking for the opportunity to do something meaningful. Lord Bram looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Motion carries. Pending final approval from the Emperor. The Emperor approved it within a week. And just like that, Elara had created something that would outlast her. Something that mattered. That night, she and Darius sat in the gardens of Wolfspire, listening to the fountain. You did it, Darius said quietly. Did what? Found your purpose. The thing that sustains you beyond anger and revenge. Elara thought about that. I suppose I did. How does it feel? Terrifying. What if I fail? What if the system doesn't work, or people abuse it, or... Then you fix it. That's what you do. You see problems and you solve them. I can't see anything, Elara pointed out. You know what I mean. She did. And it was true. She'd spent so long focused on surviving, on fighting, on destroying her enemies. But now she could build something instead. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For believing I could be more than a victim. Darius's hand found hers. You were never just a victim, even when you thought you were. Elara leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. They sat like that for a long time, 2 people who'd been broken learning that healing was possible, that love, real love, not the poisoned version Kael had offered, could grow in the ruins of trauma. It wouldn't be perfect. Nothing ever was. But it would be real. And that was enough. The vision came one last time that night, but this one was different. Elara saw herself, older, grayer, sitting in a sunlit room surrounded by papers and voices. She was laughing at something someone said, her hand gesturing as she spoke. She looked happy, whole, free. Beside her sat Darius, his hand resting on hers, his expression soft in a way Elara had never seen before. And around them, children, grandchildren, maybe. Family built not on blood and obligation, but on choice and love. The vision faded gently, like sunlight through clouds. Elara woke with tears on her face. For the first time, her visions weren't showing her death or danger or loss. They were showing her a future worth fighting for. 6 months later, Elara received a letter from an unexpected source. It was from a young woman named Celia, a merchant's daughter who'd been helped by Elara's legal aid program. She'd been falsely accused of theft by a noble who wanted to avoid paying a debt. The program had provided her with representation, and she'd won her case. The letter was short, but heartfelt. Thank you for giving me a voice when I thought I had none. Thank you for proving that justice isn't just for the wealthy. I'll never forget what you did for me. Elara held the letter for a long time, running her fingers over the paper. This was what mattered, not power or wealth or titles, making sure others didn't suffer the way she had. Good news? Darius asked, entering the room. The best kind. She told him about the letter. When she finished, he was quiet.
You're changing the world, he said finally, one person at a time. That's all anyone can do. It's more than most people try. Alara stood and crossed to him, her hands finding his face. I love you, she said. The words came easier now. I don't think I've said that enough. You've said it plenty. Not out loud. Darius kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. I love you too, he murmured. Even when you're insufferable. Especially when I'm insufferable. That too. They stood together in the fading light, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and refused to let go. The world outside was still dangerous, still full of enemies and challenges and unknowns, but Alara wasn't afraid anymore, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. She didn't need sight to see clearly. She didn't need perfection to be strong, and she didn't need anyone's permission to be powerful. She was Alara Wolf, survivor, strategist, queen, and she was just getting started. 5 years later, Finn visited Wolfspire with his new wife, a kind woman named Sarah, who made him laugh in a way Alara hadn't heard since they were children. They sat together in the garden, surrounded by the sound of fountains and birdsong. Remember when you threw yourself in front of that carriage? Finn said. I thought you'd lost your mind. I had, Alara admitted. But I found it again. You did more than that. You built an empire. I helped fix a broken system. There's a difference. Not to the hundreds of people you've helped. Alara smiled. How's your estate? Thriving. We just opened a school for children from the lower districts. Sarah's idea. She's a good influence on you. She keeps me honest. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Are you happy? Finn asked finally. Alara thought about it. Really thought about it. Was she happy? Not in the simple, uncomplicated way she'd once imagined happiness could be, but in a deeper, harder-won way. The kind of happiness that came from surviving hell and building something beautiful in its aftermath. Yes, she said. I am. Good. You deserve it. So do you. Later that night, as Alara prepared for bed, another vision came. This one showed her standing in the imperial court one final time. The emperor was older, frailer, but still sharp-eyed. Lady Wolf, he said, I'm naming you Chief Justice of the Empire. Will you accept? In the vision, Alara smiled. Yes, Your Majesty, I will. The vision ended. Alara didn't know if it would come true, didn't know if it was prophecy or possibility, but she knew one thing. Whatever came next, she'd face it. Not as a victim, not as someone defined by what had been done to her, but as someone who'd learned to turn pain into power, trauma into triumph, and darkness into light. The blind queen who'd clawed her way from death to destiny. And the story, her story, was far from over. It was just beginning. The years that followed brought changes Alara could never have imagined. The legal aid program expanded beyond the northern territories, reaching into the southern provinces and even the coastal cities. What had started as one woman's attempt to right wrongs became a movement that shifted the entire empire's approach to justice, but success bred new enemies. One morning, Alara received a visitor she hadn't expected, Lady Cassandra Thorne, a noble woman from the eastern provinces known for her sharp tongue and sharper mind. Lady Wolf, Cassandra said as she entered Alara's study. Her voice was cultured, precise. I've heard so much about you. None of it good, I imagine, Alara replied. Cassandra laughed. On the contrary, I find your work fascinating. Threatening to the established order, certainly, but fascinating. Is this a social call or an interrogation? A proposition, actually. Cassandra settled into a chair. I represent a coalition of noble women who've been watching your rise with great interest. We'd like to discuss an alliance. Alara's hand stilled on the documents she'd been reviewing. What kind of alliance? The kind that protects women's interests in a world run by men who think we're decorative at best and disposable at worst. It was bold, dangerously bold, and exactly the kind of thing that could get them all killed if they weren't careful. Tell me more, Alara said. Over the next hour, Cassandra outlined a network of noble women across the empire, each controlling significant wealth or political influence,
each tired of being sidelined by husbands, fathers, and brothers who treated them as property. "We need a leader," Cassandra said. "Someone who's already proven she can take on the patriarchy and win. Someone the Emperor respects." "You want me to lead a rebellion?" "I want you to lead a reformation. There's a difference." Alara considered it carefully. The risks were enormous, but so was the potential. "I'll need to discuss this with Darius," she said finally. "Of course, but decide quickly. Change doesn't wait for anyone." After Cassandra left, Alara sat in silence for a long time. This was bigger than her legal aid program, bigger than House Vance or House Wolf. This could reshape the entire empire, or destroy her completely. She found Darius in the training yard, sparring with his guards as he always did when he needed to think. "We need to talk," she said. He dismissed his men immediately and followed her inside. Alara told him everything Cassandra had proposed. When she finished, Darius was quiet for a long moment. "This could start a war," he said finally. "I know. The conservative nobles will see it as a direct threat to their power, which it is. I know that too. And you're considering it anyway?" Alara turned toward him. "When I was dying in that house, being poisoned by the man who claimed to love me, do you know what I kept thinking?" "What?" "That I wasn't the first. That Kael had probably done this to other women before me, and that if I didn't survive, he'd do it to someone else after." "Alara, I'm not the only woman who's been betrayed, abused, or discarded by powerful men. I'm just the one who had the resources and the rage to fight back. But what about all the others? The ones who don't have visions or alpha kings to save them?" Darius exhaled slowly. "You want to save them all. I want to give them the tools to save themselves. That's not the same thing." "It's better. Because salvation you're given can be taken away. But power you claim for yourself, that's yours forever." Darius studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, proud and a little awed. "You're going to do this no matter what I say, aren't you?" "Probably, but I'd rather do it with your support than without it." "Then you have it. All of it." He pulled her close. "But we do this smart. We build alliances carefully, we document everything, and we make sure that when we move decisively." "Agreed." "And Alara?" "Yes?" "This is going to make you the most powerful woman in the Empire. You know that, right?" Alara hadn't thought of it that way. But Darius was right. If this succeeded, she wouldn't just be Lady Wolf anymore. She'd be something entirely new, something the Empire had never seen before. "I can live with that," she said quietly. "Good, because I don't think you have a choice." The coalition met in secret over the following months. 12 noblewomen, each controlling different territories and resources, each bringing unique strengths to the alliance. They called themselves the Silver Court, a deliberate contrast to the Emperor's Golden Court. Alara became their unofficial leader, though she insisted on calling herself their coordinator instead. "Leadership implies I'm above you," she explained at their first formal meeting. "I'm not. We're equals working toward a common goal." "Spoken like a true politician," Lady Cassandra said dryly. "I'll take that as a compliment." They started small, advocating for property rights reform, pushing for laws that protected women's inheritance, lobbying for female representation in regional councils. Each victory was minor, but they added up. And people noticed. The Emperor noticed. He summoned Alara to the palace 6 months after the Silver Court's formation. She went alone despite Darius's protests. "Your Majesty," she said, kneeling. "Rise, Lady Wolf." The Emperor sounded amused. "I've been hearing interesting things about your activities." "I hope they're accurate, Your Majesty. You've formed a political coalition of noblewomen, the Silver Court, I believe you call it?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "And what exactly are your intentions with this coalition?" Alara chose her words carefully. "To ensure that half the Empire's population has a voice in how it's governed. A noble goal, some might call it seditious. Some might call equality seditious, Your Majesty. I call it overdue." The Emperor was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, genuine and surprised. "You have steel in your spine, Lady Wolf. I've always appreciated that about you." "Thank you, Your Majesty." "I'm not stopping you, but I am watching. Make sure your reformation doesn't become a revolution. I have enough problems without a civil war. Understood, Your Majesty. As she left the palace, Alara felt the weight of what she'd just done. The emperor had given her tacit approval, which meant the Silver Court was no longer a secret rebellion. It was official policy. Done. 2 years later, the Silver Court had grown to 30 members. Their reforms had passed into law across most of the empire. Women could own property independently, could represent themselves in court, could hold positions of authority without male guardianship. It wasn't perfect. Change never was, but it was progress. Real, measurable progress. Alara stood before the Imperial Council, now expanded to include 5 women from the Silver Court, and presented their latest proposal. We're proposing an education initiative, she said, one that provides free schooling to all children, regardless of gender or class. Lord Bram frowned. That's an ambitious undertaking. The cost alone will be offset by increased productivity and innovation, Alara interrupted smoothly. An educated population is a prosperous population. The data supports this. She'd learned to speak their language, to frame moral arguments in economic terms. It worked more often than not. The council debated for hours. In the end, they approved a pilot program in 3 territories. It was a start. After the meeting, Lady Cassandra found Alara in the hallway. "You're brilliant at this," she said. "You know that?" "I'm adequate at this. There's a difference." "Stop being modest. It doesn't suit you." Alara smiled. "How are things in the eastern provinces?" "Tense. The conservative nobles are pushing back hard against our reforms. There's talk of forming a counter-coalition. Let them. We have the emperor's backing and the law on our side. For now. But politics are fluid. Today's ally is tomorrow's enemy. Then we make sure we're too valuable to become enemies with." Cassandra laughed. "See? Brilliant." That night, Alara had another vision. This one was different from any she'd experienced before. She saw herself old, truly old, with silver hair and lined hands. She was sitting in a garden, surrounded by children who weren't hers. Students, she realized, young women studying law and governance. One of them asked a question. "Lady Wolf, how did you do it? How did you change an entire empire?" The older version of herself smiled. "I didn't change it alone. I just refused to accept that change was impossible. And I found others who felt the same way." "But you were blind. Didn't that make it harder?" "It made it different. But blindness taught me to see what others missed, the patterns beneath the surface, the connections between seemingly unrelated events. It was a gift, in its way." "Do you regret anything?" The older Alara was quiet for a moment. "I regret the years I spent afraid. The time I wasted thinking I needed to be perfect before I could be powerful. But the rest? The fighting, the struggle, the constant battle to make things better? No, I don't regret any of that." The vision faded. Alara woke with tears on her face, but they weren't sad tears. They were grateful ones, because she'd seen her future, and it was everything she'd hoped for. The vision from the emperor's court came true 3 years later. Alara was 52 years old when the emperor summoned her to his private chambers. He was dying. Everyone knew it. "Lady Wolf," he said, his voice weaker than she'd ever heard it. "I'm stepping down. My son will take the throne in 6 months. I'm sorry, Your Majesty." "Don't be. I've lived a long life, made my mark." He coughed. "But before I go, I want to ensure my legacy includes the changes you've fought for." "Your Majesty?" "I'm creating a new position, Chief Justice of the Empire, someone who oversees all legal matters, ensures the law is applied fairly, and has the authority to challenge even the emperor if necessary." Alara's breath caught. "I'm offering it to you," he said, "if you'll accept." She'd seen this moment in her vision years ago, but living it was different, more real, more terrifying. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm also blind, female, and controversial. The conservative nobles will never accept." "The conservative nobles don't have a choice. I'm still emperor for 6 more months. And in that time, I'm making damn sure this empire has someone who gives a damn about justice in charge of it." Alara's hands were shaking. This was everything. Everything she'd worked for, fought for, bled for. "Yes," she said quietly. "I accept." The emperor smiled. Good, because I wasn't taking no for an answer. The investiture ceremony was held in the grand hall before the entire court. Alara knelt before the emperor, frail now but still commanding, and felt the weight of the ceremonial chain settle around her shoulders. Rise, Chief Justice Alara Wolf, he said, and serve this empire with the same courage and integrity you've shown throughout your life. Alara stood. The room erupted in applause. Not everyone was happy. She could hear the scattered silence where conservative nobles refused to clap. But she didn't care, because the majority were celebrating a blind woman becoming the second most powerful person in the empire, celebrating change, celebrating progress. Darius was waiting for her when she descended from the dais. How does it feel? He asked quietly. Like I can finally breathe. You've earned this. Every bit of it. We've earned this, Alara corrected. I couldn't have done any of it without you. You would have found a way. You always do. That night they hosted a celebration at Wolfspire. The Silver Court attended. Finn and Sarah brought their children, 3 bright, curious kids who asked endless questions. Marin was there, older now, but still sharp. Even some of the conservative nobles who'd opposed Alara showed up, offering grudging respect. As the evening wore on, Alara found herself standing alone on a balcony, listening to the sounds of celebration behind her. She thought about the girl she'd been, blind and dying, throwing herself in front of a carriage, desperate and broken. And she thought about the woman she'd become. Chief Justice, wife, leader, reformer, whole. The journey between those 2 versions of herself had been brutal, but it had been worth it. Every moment of pain, every battle fought, every victory won, worth it. There you are, Darius said, joining her on the balcony. People are asking for a speech. Tell them I'm retired from speeches. You literally became Chief Justice today. You can't retire yet. Alara laughed. Fine, but keep it short. They returned to the hall together. Alara raised her hand and the room fell silent. Thank you all for being here, she said, for supporting me, challenging me, and refusing to let me give up even when I wanted to. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I was once told that blindness made me weak, that I'd never amount to anything without sight, and for a long time, I believed it. But I learned something these past years. Power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from perseverance, from refusing to let anyone else define your worth. So to everyone here who's ever been told they're not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough, I say this, prove them wrong. Not because you need their approval, but because you deserve to live in a world that recognizes your value. Thank you, all of you, for helping build that world. The applause was deafening, and as Alara stood there, surrounded by people who'd fought beside her, she realized something. She'd stopped surviving a long time ago. Now she was living, really living, and nothing could take that away from her. The blind queen had risen, and her reign was just beginning.